Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's a great day to be in San Francisco. It's wonderful to be in this beautiful building. I'd like to thank our member, Swice, and those at the city for allowing us to be here. We really appreciate it, so thank you so much. This is truly a treat, and it's good to see everyone, so welcome. Before we begin, I'd like to ask Secretary Gladstone to call the meeting. Well, I'm going to call the meeting to order, so the meeting is now in order, and I'm going to ask Secretary Gladstone for a roll call.
Okay, thank you. Sunny Ward here. Our newest member is Victoria Brash. Here. Tien Fang.
Here.
Brett Gladstone here. Mitra Kanani.
Here.
Ron Jones.
Present.
Leonard Manukian.
Present.
Robert Pierman Jr.
Present.
Nilza Serrano.
Here.
And Fuad Suisse.
Here.
I'm happy to report that the full board is here.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to welcome our newest member, Victoria Brash. She comes from my side of the state, and it's very nice that we were able to fly up together. So we also went to the same school at the same time together, so that's also a special surprise. And anyway, it's really great to have you, so welcome.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank John Ryszczynski from the LATC chair for attending. Thanks for being here. I'd also like to remind the board of our voting requirements today. All motions and seconds will be repeated for the record, and votes on all motions will be taken by a roll call. Please note that we will limit public comments to 2 minutes. At this time, I'd like to open up the floor for public comment for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda? It appears that we do not. So we've moved past public comment. Item C, we'll now move to item D, the update from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you, Yvonne Durantes, Assistant Deputy Director, Board and Bureau Relations, for being with us, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah, right here, right? This microphone? Okay.
Is the microphone?
All right. Are you able to hear me all right? Great. All right. Well, thank you all for having me here. And like Chair Ward said, I think it really is a treat. It's my first time here, and it is such a beautiful building and such a beautiful day. So happy to be here. And happy to welcome new member Brash as well. Welcome to the board, and thank you again for assuming this role. So looking forward to this. So I've been with DCA for almost 2 years, and this is the shortest DCA update I've ever had, so happy Friday. And so I'm happy to take any questions at any moment or at the end as well. I'm going to jump right into it, and beginning with our budget letter 2420, vacancy savings and position elimination update. So DCA continues to work to address the state's budget deficit. At the end of July, the Department of Finance issued a budget letter 2420 that outlines the assumed reduction of the state's workforce by 10,000 vacancies and $1.5 billion. The Department of Finance estimated a target reduction for each state department by reviewing the department's vacancies and then assuming half of the savings from the vacant positions. DCA worked closely with agency and with each board and bureau to provide detailed notes, requested exclusions, and justifications position by position. And so DCA submitted a proposed vacancy reduction plan to the Department of Finance in mid-August and is now awaiting approval. Similarly, there was Budget 2424, and that was in regard to government efficiencies reductions. And so additionally, in August 16th of this year, Department of Finance also issued a budget letter which outlines the reduction of state department budgets by 7.95% in order to achieve state savings of $2.1 billion in 2024, 2025, and future fiscal years. DCA is identifying fixed cost exemptions that cannot be reduced, such as the Office of Attorney General and the Office of Administrative Hearings, so they can be excluded from consideration. The final budget reduction plan will be submitted to agency and the Department of Finance for approval later this month as well. DCA's budget office continues to work closely with each board and bureau on reduction requests while always balancing our mission of consumer protection. These are challenging budget exercises, and the department would like to acknowledge the board and bureau leaders for their thoughtfulness and diligent efforts, often under very quick deadlines. And so DCA will continue to share updates from the Department of Finance as they are received. As a reminder, DCA boards and bureaus must continue to scrutinize expenditures and maximize cost savings, only authorizing expenditures that are mission critical and essential to operations. And lastly, I just do want to provide a highlight on DCA's innovation that was recognized, and DCA is very proud to share that on August 20th, Jason Piccioni, DCA's Deputy Director of Information of the Office of Information Services, was honored for developing DCA's Federal Professional License Portability and State Registration Portal. And so Jason received the Best of California Award in the Innovation Serving the Public category at the 2024 California Government Innovation Summit. And so this portal was launched last fall, and DCA boards and bureaus have accepted over 176 individuals to practice in California through the online portal. DCA did not receive any additional funding or staffing for its implementation. It has worked hard to ensure its efficiency, serving military service members and their spouses relocating to California. And so the online portal Jason designed and implemented has been used by the U.S. Department of Defense and as a model for other states as well. So that's all I have. The only other little reminder is that in October 22nd, we will be having our board member orientation training. So if you have been either appointed or reappointed within the last year and have not taken that training, we recommend that you take it, as it is the last one of the year and it will be virtual. That's all I have for you today.
Thank you so much. At this time, I'll open it up for public comment. Do we have any comments from the public? I don't see that we do. How about from our board? Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
Yes,
Member Pearman.
perhaps to you or for Laura, but you mentioned the assumed vacancy freeze, et cetera. So does our board have any vacancies, and does that policy mean we cannot fill all of them?
We did have vacancies. The vacancy reduction was a snapshot in time, so they looked at everyone's position list, I think for the month of June, at your vacancies, and proposed eliminating those, and then we can make an argument for what we want to try to keep. So I'll provide a more detailed update on this at our next meeting once hopefully the plans have been approved and can give more information. But so we did submit some recommendations and some justifications on what we should try to keep along with the budget reductions. And so we'll see how we do.
Can I ask for clarification? Is the vacancy position subject to elimination or just a freeze?
They're eliminating the positions. Yeah, and it is quite common in DCA boards to hold some positions vacant for salary savings because our budgets don't get augmented over the last several years, so programs try to use that money to cover costs in other areas. So we certainly had some positions vacant at the time.
And Laura, just as a point of clarification, these vacancies don't in any way compromise our public service.
Well, that's hard to say. I guess it depends on the vacancy. So you could, if we had positions that were vacant that we felt were critical, we could make that argument. Like, so as an example, LATC at the time had their licensing analyst position vacant. And we said if that position isn't filled, they're not going to be able to proceed with licensing, right? So we do make that argument for some of them, but I don't think it'll be successful for every position, but.
Thank you.
But I think the director at the time did acknowledge that with these cuts, it could really impact programs' core services, and we would have to acknowledge that.
And just as a point of clarification, that the impacts of those vacancies will be communicated in the forthcoming report.
Right, so we'll do a detailed budget update at the next meeting, and so in that, we'll wrap in like the budget reduction that Mr. Antes talked about, and then I'll also include the position vacancies. So if I have more information before then, I'll send a written update, but we'll talk about it at the next meeting as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, there will likely be more updates by the next meeting.
Thank you.
We're currently in a bit of a waiting game with some updates. Well, thank you all for having me. Always happy to take any questions, even during the breaks as well. If you have any questions on your trainings or anything, please let me know. Thank you
Director
all.
Durantes, thank you so much. That was great.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'm going to jump back really quickly to item B, opening remarks. I failed to welcome Shelley Galloway to the meeting today, who's representing and participating as our legal counsel. So thanks for joining us. I apologize both to you and Member Brash that our turnout is so small and that our crowd size has an issue. So we'll have to step up the public interaction in the future. Get some people in here.
What happens when you meet in person? No one wants to come.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. Okay, so moving right along, again, it's really wonderful to be in this beautiful building, and so at this time, not only are we lucky to be in the building, but we'll have a presentation and discussion on the San Francisco Public Works projects by Julia Lau. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Did it? Lowy. My apologies. Principal Architect and Bureau Manager, Bureau of Architecture, San Francisco Public Works. Welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry the crowd's not that big here either. However, we've got the webcast going.
That's
and
right.
I think my entire office of 72 architectural staff are probably watching it right now.
Okay, there you go.
I'm a little nervous then. And also I wanted to thank you guys for asking us to come here. And I stupidly asked Laura what you guys do, and I'm like, duh, you give me my license every year, so be kind when I do. Anyway, I wanted to say welcome, board members. Is it up? How do we get it up? How do we get it? Is it? Okay, good. So welcome, board members, and thank you, Fawad, for asking us to present. I've done many presentations of the Bureau of Architecture, which our acronym is BOA, in the last several years. So this is fun for me, and it's an honor to be here and share with you all about our own Bureau of Architecture at San Francisco Public Works. San Francisco Public Works was officially created in January 8th, 1900, with the official name of the Board of Public Works. Our first task was to organize and regulate street construction and paving projects throughout the city. Our original 4 bureaus were streets, lighting, building, and light and water services. And over the next century, nearly 2 decades later, our roles have shifted and expanded dramatically. In 2014, after a long year of rebranding, the department switched its name from San Francisco Department of Public Works, or DPW, to San Francisco Public Works. And our budget for our first year of operations in 1900 was $637,000. Now we have an operating budget of over $400 million. This is a picture of the Bureau of Architecture from 1968. Luckily, we're a lot more diverse than this now, actually, which you will see. And this is our org chart. So we have 4 divisions, distinct bureaus in each division. But at a higher level, I would say we have the operations side of the organization, which do all our street cleanings, and then the project delivery side of the organization, which includes our architecture, engineering, and project management components. So now I'll introduce myself. I'm Julia Lowy. I am the Principal Architect and Bureau Manager for BOA, and I report to the City Architect, Ron Alameda, who wanted to be here today, but he's got a tooth issue, so, nothing worse than toothache pain. One of my themes over the last 11 years since I joined Public Works is to talk about why civic architecture is so important. And you're sitting in a most amazing example of that, and why architects and government matter. I mean, for centuries, civic buildings have been the pillars of excellence, the best architecture civilization has to offer. And this is exemplified from the Parthenon to the World Trade Center, transportation hub in New York City. So our civic architecture really needs to stand the test of time, and it must always be on the forefront of design, innovation, technology, fire and life safety, which is near and dear to my heart, and sustainability. And it must have strong advocacy to ensure the continuation of excellence in our built environment. And governments at all levels spend billions of dollars each year on major capital projects, yet there's a lack of architects in government who oversee and ensure these projects are built to the highest level of standards. And often, our projects are only built once in a lifetime, and you will see some examples later, and they need to be built to last, as they are for the people then they represent the best of our civilization. So, let's start 4 days before the earthquake in 1906. Hopefully the sound's on, right? Following are some demographics of San Francisco around 1900 when we watched this video of Market Street, just taken a few days before the 1906 earthquake. San Francisco has a population of 342,782 at the time of the 1900 census, making it the city the most populous in California and the 9th most populous nationwide. In 2020, its population was 815,000, 18,600 per square mile. There were 53,323 dwellings in San Francisco in 1906. In the 1900 census, 95% of the population was white, 5% Asian or Pacific Islander, and less than 1% black. Per the 2020 census, 45% white, 34% Asian, 15% Hispanic or Latino, 5% black, and Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders less than 4%. In 1900, San Francisco was 34% foreign-born. This population totaled 116,885, of whom 35,000 were from Germany. In 2020, believe it or not, 34% of the San Francisco residents are foreign-born, the same as in 1900, which makes us pretty interesting, I think. There were 304 farms in San Francisco in 1900. These farms were spread across 8,219 acres. In 2002, only 8 farms existed. There were 4,002 manufacturing establishments in 1900 and only 883 in 2003. This is the Ferry Building. This is remastered and digitized. I don't know, many of you may have seen this video. It's pretty cool, I think. The Ferry Building is one of my favorite buildings in the city. So I'll just move along.
Gosh.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's like the weather today.
However, not so cool is 4 days later, in the morning of the April 18th, 1906, a massive 8.25 earthquake shook San Francisco and brought it to its knees. Though the quake lasted less than a minute, its immediate impact was disastrous. The earthquake also ignited several fires around the city that burned for 3 days and destroyed 500 city blocks. Despite a quick response from San Francisco's large military population, the city was devastated. The earthquake and the fires killed an estimated 3,000 people and left half the city's 400,000 residents homeless. 80% of the city was destroyed. The survivors slept in tents in city parks and the Presidio, stood in long lines for food, and were required to do their cooking outside in the street to minimize the threat of additional fires. The San Francisco earthquake is considered one of the worst natural disasters in U.S. history. Some fascinating facts, though, about the San Francisco 1906 earthquake. It was the first natural disaster to be photographed and filmed, as you can see here. Enrico Caruso was in town for the opera, and it took 9 years, only 9 years, to rebuild the city. We'll just move right along. That's a little depressing. This is the new San Francisco City Hall that was built and opened before the 1906 earthquake. Noted planner and architect, as many of you may know, published a plan in 1905 to redesign the city, including a new civic center complex around the city. But the plans were shelved in the wake of the 1906 earthquake, which destroyed this 1899 City Hall. Some people actually call San Francisco the instant city because it was built so quickly. I mean, I have projects that have gone on longer than 9 years, and they rebuilt the whole city in 9 years. So that's pretty fascinating. But I would like to talk about the new City Hall, originally planned to be finished in a few years for $1.5 million. Instead, it took 27 years to build, was 400% over budget, and construction stopped each time the city ran out of money. Multiple generations of crooked politicians brought in shady contractors who used inferior materials, creating an infrastructure so bad that the building smelled like sewage the day it opened, and the walls were full of sand. There are some who believe that actually the San Francisco Bureau of Architecture was created to ensure that this never happened again, to ensure quality, integrity, fire life safety in our civic buildings, because BOA was actually born in 1907 after the earthquake. Oh yeah, I didn't show this. Yeah, this is the site of the new City Hall. I mean, it reminds me, I was in Hiroshima in the 80s, and it reminds me of Hiroshima, the skeleton of the civic building in Hiroshima after the bomb. Okay. Oh, I'm not in slideshow mode. I'm sorry. Better. So San Francisco Public Works is the oldest department in the city, established in 1900. The original four bureaus, as I mentioned, were Bureau of Engineering, Streets, Building, and Light and Water Services. The first architect, Newton J. Thorpe, for San Francisco, was appointed October 7th of 1907 after the earthquake. And actually, when this building opened, we had the Bureau of Engineering, who Fuad knows very well, right? And the Bureau of Architecture, and the main drafting room were located on the third floor of this building. Also, we had the Board of Public Works, and I can't point to it on this drawing exactly, but it's there. So Public Works actually played a very crucial role in the rebuilding of the city after the earthquake. So, why architects in government, and what we do, who we are, and why we matter. I have come up with 5 bullet points to see what we bring to the profession as a whole, as government architects. We are a client. San Francisco has a 30-year capital plan of $30 billion. We're an advocate for excellence in civic architecture. We're a catalyst for public architects to ensure that benefits the community. And then we also are teacher, mentor, and learning lab. We have a very extensive internship program. And we're a keeper of standards of excellence and a steward of our archives. The Bureau of Architecture currently has about 72 architectural staff. We are the only department like this in the country that has an architectural firm who do in-house architectural work. When I started, we were about 52 to 55 staff, and since I've been here, I've hired 62 of them So I figure I can retire when I've hired everybody. I remember the chief of the fire department said that one time. When she retired, she said, I hired everybody, so now I can retire. We have a very good demographics, as you can see on the right-hand side. 38% Asian, 32% white, 20% Hispanic, 7.35% black, actually, and that's higher now, and multiracial, 1.47. We're about 40 to 60% male and female. And we're centered around, we have 5 studios that are centered around our city departments. So like PUC, we have 1 studio for PUC. We have 2 studios that just do DPH work for the Department of Public Health. One's clinics and the other one's the campus. And then we have a studio that does libraries, justice facilities, and fire stations. We also have a strategic goal. BOA has developed their own strategic goal, which aligns with the city's overall strategic goal. And our strategic goal is around a culture of excellence through continuous learning and growth. And these are the sponsoring agencies who are our clients. There's a lot more agencies in the city than this, but these are the main ones that we work with. And as a keeper of standards, this slide mostly speaks to resiliency and sustainability. And in fact, the city itself as a whole has a whole office of resiliency led by my friend Brian Strong. You may remember Brian. Yeah. All our buildings have to be LEED gold minimum. And all of our new buildings and major renovations has to be 100% electrified, no natural gas. And we're moving towards net zero by 2040. And my department is working more and more on mass timber projects. And then BOA is an amazing place for interns. All of our interns get hands-on experience. They work on the projects just like an entry-level architect. They get to do a diversity of project types. You know, as I mentioned, we have libraries, police stations, community centers, rec and park buildings, and healthcare, which in the private sector you don't get to do because you're like, I worked 23 years in housing myself, or hospitality, 4 years in healthcare. And then all of our interns get to go out in the field, and they have construction administration experience because all our projects are within the city and county of San Francisco. We've had 2 full-time scanners who actively scan all of our drawings from the original City Hall drawings from 1910 to our most current drawings. And this is a fun video I wanted to share with you.
Inside the canister until you open it.
These are beautiful historical drawings of San Francisco. These drawings range from 1908 to 2010. Yeah, it is a good workout. I built muscle. A lot of people don't know this, but we have a full team of architects that design civic buildings and public spaces. Sometimes it's creating a brand new building from the ground up. Other times it's giving new life to one of our historic structures.
You had to have some degree of artistic skill from a handcraft point of view to become an architect at that time. It's an incredible amount of loss, in my opinion, to not draw by hand. That skill of having to manipulate a pencil or a pen to make line weights and to make the drawing read. I have seen this development of technology and this huge transformation in the world, but you do leave some things behind that have beauty to them.
Nowadays, technologies are completely different. We're not using paper, we're not using pencils, but we're using computers to model our buildings, to produce drawings. It's different craftsmanship. So in addition to the beautiful drawings, the person who was taking care of our archive for almost 30 years, he was the one who organized all drawings and listed all of them in 8 big binders with all the name of the projects and dates. We're still using his work, which is amazing.
840. So we're building an electronic archive of all the drawings for future use. The scanning project started back in March 2018. We have scanned about 36,000 sheets of paper, and there's the remaining balance of 92,981. We can do about 100 sheets per day. Hopefully by February 2020 will be completed.
We feel that our collection of historical drawings represents San Francisco's rich history. Not only do we help make history, we also preserve it for the benefit of future generations.
So this is one of my favorite episodes of Public Works TV. If you ever want to look it up, you can binge watch it because every episode's only a few minutes long. But now we only have one scanner working half-time. We've pretty much scanned most all of the drawings. And so that's why that is one of my favorites. So as a city, we have a large capital planning program. And it's primarily funded by general obligation bonds voted on by the residents of the city. Our 10-year capital planning program, which includes $38 million over 10 years and 170,000 local jobs. 38 billion, sorry. We're actually, some people consider us the biggest developer west of the Mississippi. But we're also a client and an advocate for excellence in architecture. And our biggest projects are managed by the Bureau of Project Management by my colleague Magdalena Ryer, and are by and large designed by private sector firms. The PM group is mostly architects, and they understand the nature of project delivery, standard of care, excellence in construction, good design, and fire and life safety. Contrary to some beliefs, we actually do more work with private sector architects than we could possibly accomplish in-house. Most of our in-house work is actually, probably 85% are small projects under $5 million, roofing projects. We're going to be starting fixing the roof of this building, actually, and some of the pointing on the stone. That's going to be more than that, $5 million. But we're also architects. So we do want to have a sprinkling of some new and major renovation work as well to keep my staff on target and motivated instead of just doing waterproofing projects. But we have awarded over $4.76 billion in projects over $20 million to the private sector A&E firms, 5.6 times the work we've done in-house, and these are just a few of them, as you may recognize. And then we also have a robust as-needed, master as-needed agreements with private sector architects, engineers, and specialty consultants. And this is for approximately $255 million in recurring master as-needed contracts for all of these different. And we have consultants, and I've added quite a few of them myself when I started, like specifications. I didn't want my staff writing specs. It's mind-numbing, you know, and just using the expertise of small firms. And that includes local business enterprise, which are LBEs, and micro LBEs. This just recently awarded about 3 micro LBEs, which are small firms that make less than $1 million a year. I don't know, some of you may know the Chief Architect Initiative by the President of the AIA, Kimberly Downey. And these are 5 of her points, which I thought was very interesting because they kind of align with the points that I had before. And why there should be a chief architect in every major city. And one is to champion climate action, advance health equity, promote affordable housing, lead historic preservation and adaptive reuse projects, and enhance transportation and transit-oriented development. So in the next several slides, I'm going to go over some of our own in-house work and kind of correlate it with these bullet points. Now, again, I already mentioned that we are a champion of climate action. And this is one of our more recent projects, the Southeast Family Health Center in the Bayview neighborhood. It was a brand-new ground-up family health center, the first one built in over 50 years. It's a pretty interesting model. This is a Chinatown Public Health Center, right in the middle of Chinatown, over the Broadway Tunnel, for those of you who may be familiar with San Francisco. Some of you may not even know there was a health center there. It was originally built in the 1960s, and it was done by Public Works, and it actually had the first public art component. We are completely redoing it, taking it down to the structure and remodeling the entire thing. It's hopefully, if the bond passes in November, we'll start construction soon after. Promote affordable housing. We don't do housing. I did for 23 years, but we can't do everything, and we don't want to. We mostly focus on civic projects. However, we do work extensively with the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing on alternative housing for homeless. This is a video. I'm not going to share it with you now because we're running out of time, but it did win the AIA I Look Up challenge several years ago, so if you want, I can share you a link later. Oops, nope. Okay, here we go. But homelessness continues to be San Francisco's greatest challenge, as you all probably are very well aware of. In 2022, there was an estimated 7,800 San Franciscans were homeless, 3,400 of which were sheltered, while 4,400 lived on the streets. So Public Works and the Bureau of Architecture and Bureau of Engineering have been tasked over the last 10 years to develop solutions to this humanitarian crisis and engaged in the design of numerous navigation centers, safe shelters access for all called SAFE sites, vehicular triage centers, initially unique to San Francisco. Many of these strategies have been employed throughout the country. These are a list of some of the projects that we've done. This is the Division Circle. It's one of the first navigation centers we did. It's a tensile structure. It's actually really amazing, and you can see it at the end of the street here, at the end of Van Ness if you drive. It's right in the Caltrans parking lot on the on-ramp to 101. What was amazing to me is that inside the tent is really high. It's like this high, right? And there's light coming in through a skylight, and the walls are like this thick, and you're in the middle of an on-ramp, and you can't hear a thing. So it's actually quite amazing. So there's different models that we've done. This is a warehouse, for example, that we utilized for a navigation center. And it's Bayshore Boulevard in 2 rented buildings that stand empty for years. So San Francisco is a very tight, landlocked city, so we've got to do everything we can to find locations. We have shower and bathroom trailers, and then connect everything on a lot of the solutions by a raised deck so that you can run all of the utilities and things underneath them, and also make it more accessible. And then this one is Bryant Street. So it's a series of cabins, or trailers, sorry, kind of around a campus. Again, all connected with a raised deck. The Division of the State Architect. That's just, those trailers have to come fully permitted, of course. And then we've been more recently working on alternatives because, as you know, COVID kind of changed things for these big navigation centers with, like a dormitory style of beds. So we have now done and are doing vehicular triage centers and tiny cabins. We just recently opened these tiny cabins on Mission. They come prefab, and there's individual cabins for each homeless. You can have couples and/or individuals in each one. And then this is a vehicular triage center. I don't have a better picture of it, but, you know, it's not gorgeous, right? But we've got to they get social services, they have bathrooms, they have solar lights, and even dumping stations. So number 4 was lead historic preservation and adaptive reuse. If you get a chance, just down the road here is the War Memorial Veterans Building. That project was being completed when I started. Absolutely gorgeous, completely restored. It's a beautiful example of the Beaux-Arts architecture, and the life safety of the building had been a primary concern, so it was completely redone so that it would be sustainable after an earthquake. We also did the whole thing in Revit, so they had to model the whole building. Then this is one of my favorites, is the San Francisco Animal Care and Control Adaptive Reuse Project. It was built in the 1800s. It was a Muni overhead lines warehouse and powerhouse before that. And now it's an animal care control, multi-story animal care and control center, utilizing every bit of space, including the roof for a bird sanctuary. And it's also designed as an essential services building in response to the Hurricane Katrina, because in Hurricane Katrina, people wouldn't leave without their pets. They just wouldn't leave. So this is a way to convince them to leave. And it's actually designed to be operational for 72 hours after an event. And 5, enhanced transportation and transit-oriented development. We don't do a lot of this at BOA, but we were part of the Van Ness BRT project. Talk about taking a long time, right? You was probably working on it when you were here. Yeah, this took forever. But BOA worked on the railings and the canopies for this. And people love it now. This is one that's close to my heart. Not long after I started, the director came to me and said, if you look at these images on the bottom, these are the BART station enclosures in Oakland. And he said, I don't want those. I'm not in love with that design, neither was I. So we kind of mobilized, a couple of us, and worked with BART very closely and did a mini competition, a very mini competition, for some architects. And we found Via Architecture, who did these beautiful canopies. And they're up and down Market right now. They're still under construction. They have a lot more potentials. They're designed so you could have a green roof on them with butterflies, things like that. Or you could project images into the underneath. I think there's a lot more that could be done with them. But as always, budget's an issue. And then mine is build projects that benefit the community. This is the new Southeast Community Facility and Gardens. They replaced a community center in the Bayview District in 1986 as a means to mitigate the adverse environmental and social impacts of the Public Utilities Commission Southeast plant, the sewage plant, and the surrounding Bayview residential neighborhood. This is probably our crowning achievement at BOA since I've been here. It's already won AIA, San Francisco, and California awards. It's absolutely gorgeous. I remember when I first went there when it was all framed up, and to me it says Civic with a big C. You know, it's just the ceilings are so high. It has affordable daycare services, workforce education programs, offices for local community groups, a public cafe, and a community room for celebrations and community gatherings. Since it's been open, it's been in constant use. This project I did when I first started is called the Teen Center, which we called the Mix, and it's actually on the second floor of the library across the quad here. And it provides a space for inner city youth to explore, create, make, and discover new tools and technology, and they're not typically found in a public library setting. It's pretty interesting because The Librarian of Congress actually came to visit this center as a model that she wanted to do for Washington DC at the Library of Congress. So we were very proud. And believe it or not, it's the first time I ever stamped drawings. I thought I could get out through my career. I know you guys are CAB, but, you know, when you work in the private sector, it's always the principal that stamps the drawings. Anyway, it's pretty cool, and you have to be a teen to go in there. You can't get in there as an adult. This is one of my favorites, Glen Canyon Rec Center at the Glen Canyon Park. It was originally designed by William Merchant and constructed by the WPA in 1937, and San Francisco's first full-scale rec center. It's surrounded by playing fields, playgrounds, and a large auditorium, a gymnasium for basketball and volleyball, and a base for city dwellers to explore the wild canyon. The picture in the upper left was the original building, and then that's what it looked like on the lower left before we renovated it. It's the gymnasium and auditorium were renovated to reveal the original roof structure, previously concealed by acoustical ceiling. And we did some modern adaptations by converting a former stage and fly loft to a daylit climbing gym and provide new interactive performance. And then this is the Golden Gate Golf Clubhouse. It's a mass timber project that we just recently opened. The original one burned down. So there was a homeless encampment, and they got a fire and it started. Anyway, this is a beautiful project, and we're really proud of it. It's on the public golf course in Lincoln, in the Golden Gate Park. And then this is Alameda Creek Watershed Center at the Water Temple in Sunol. It's an interpretive center and a 2.5-acre botanical garden. It should be open next spring. It's pretty interesting. And it's got the only freshwater aquarium in California. That's it. Did I make it under 20 minutes?
Wow.
That was amazing.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. Before I open up to comments here, though, we'll go to the crowd, to the public, to see if we have any public comments or questions. Do we have any public comments or questions? And we do not. So we'll come back to us because I know we'll have lots of wonderful things to say. First of all, wow, amazing, beautiful. I know you're proud of all the hard work that you guys do. I'm so grateful for you. Just a couple things from me. I loved that you're into fire life safety, so that made me smile and also makes me feel safe. So I love that. And the other thing that I loved is that you outsource your specifications so that your staff doesn't have to do them. I'm sure they're grateful for that as well, but I'm sure there are lots of people out there who, like you, like fire life safety, love specifications.
Yeah,
I've
no, I
met
have
them.
some.
I've met them. They love it.
Yeah.
It's difficult for me personally. The two projects that are just, I can't keep smiling about, the Glen Canyon adaptive reuse, just beautiful building, beautiful work, but the adaptive reuse in the climbing center in the fly space of the auditorium is fantastic, and the pet center.
Yeah.
What a special.
Well,
what a
they say
special
now
project.
reusing old buildings is the new environmental approach. right?
Absolutely. Does anybody else?
I have.
Okay, let's start with Member Gladstone.
Well, thanks for coming. I think the BOA is one of the least known of all the city departments, and I work with a lot of city departments in my profession as an attorney, and I'm astounded by the quality and the architecture, and I think that, one of the reasons I moved here from the East Coast 41 years ago is because I found the architecture, and specifically Civic Center and its coherence, to be one of the most interesting urban design, localities in the country. You didn't mention urban design, but I know much of what you do, it relates to that. And in fact, I thought of becoming an urban designer myself. I think the BOA needs more needs more exposure in the city. You're one of the least, excuse me for saying that, but knowing City Hall and being here for 40 years in my practice, I must say, you know, your office doesn't get a great deal of attention. And, you know, I would suggest considering ways you could. For example, one thing would be to give a presentation to the San Francisco Planning Commission, as that's, you know, looked at by thousands of people live and often later. And I think that, you know, you should be commended for the work and the quality, and thank you for coming here.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I used to say we're like a clandestine firm, but we actually have had more and more national exposure through the AIA, and it's actually one of the reasons in the last 11 years I got my FAIA this year. So we have done presentations for the Full Arts Commission, which never has happened before, which was pretty honorable. But yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword too, because some of the private sector architects are like, how come you guys are doing work? Why aren't we doing the work? But we actually, like I said, we give out 5 times as much than we do in-house. So I think it's important to have architecture. Yeah, we're very unique that way.
Thanks, Member Gladstone. Member Kanani?
I really appreciated your presentation. Thank you. With regards to this building, I was hoping to hear a little bit about the, I understand, I remember that this building was heavily damaged after 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake.
Yeah.
And some of the, I personally was part of a team that we visited this building the day that the entire building was transferred to a new foundation.
That's right, base isolation.
Yes, and base isolation. And so there are several innovative issues that have happened to this building. If you are aware of any or remember any of them, I would appreciate to know.
Well, I actually wasn't involved with Public Works when this building was renovated, but I did get a tour with my old office, and we actually crawled under the base isolation, and they said, by the way, if there's an earthquake while you're under here, you guys, we'd all be dead, because it wasn't completely converted at that point, you know.
Yes, yes.
And then we got to crawl up into the dome. And one of the things that I thought was the most fascinating is the plaster dome inside, the dome within the dome, the inside, is suspended by horsehair. And
Oh my gosh.
horsehair ropes that are about this big. And the structural engineers analyzed it, and they said that it was fine, that the horsehair was just strong. And so that I thought was really interesting.
Do you know if that tour of the dome at the top is still available to the public? It used to be.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's publicly available, but I think, Fuad, if you talk to somebody, the director's
Member Gladstone would like to see the horsehair.
I'm not thinking of that. I'm thinking
I'm kidding.
members of the public. Of course, I would never want to
I want to
bring
see it.
something so personal up.
I would like to see it. Vice President Jones.
Thank you. First, I want to commend you for your good work and your department's good work. I do have a few questions, though. The relationship between your work as a design firm, the end developer, and owner-operator. So you mentioned healthcare facilities. Does the city, as a design firm, who's the client, and then who operates the facility? And is it leased to these agencies?
So it's our different various sponsoring agencies that I call them, sponsoring agencies, because sometimes, you know, I'm also very service-oriented, and coming from the private sector, you think of my client, right? And what we want to do is we're a service industry, and we serve our client. However, the city is composed of dozens of different departments, public health department, the Department of Emergency Management, the library department, the health, fire and police, right? All these different departments. Those are our clients, right? So that's who we do the work for. So we operate very similar to a private sector firm in that we give them a proposal, you know, we go back and forth, and we agree to the terms, and then we deliver the work.
So the city operates the health clinics, for example? The city operates the health clinics, is the question?
Yes.
Okay, got you. And then I also want to commend you, your creative application to housing. California, as you know, has struggled with its housing needs, and as a residential designer, I understand the challenges, but I commend you for just the creativity, and both in the variations. I love the navigational centers. One's just a block from my office, and I was concerned when it was first conceived about what it would do to impact. We're just along the marina, but it's almost just blends in.
Yeah.
But it speaks volumes to the vision and the application. So I applaud you guys for that. And I'd love to talk to you more about some of the other things you guys are doing. because
Thank you.
I'm curious as to why more cities aren't thinking this way.
Well, they are, and in fact, the Division Circle Navigation Center, when I was working on my FAIA, I realized a whole firm came out of that one project, from Sprung Structures, the project manager, and the contractor, and they developed a whole firm that's deploying different kinds of navigation centers all around the western states.
Great. Nice
Yeah.
to hear. Thank
I'd
you.
love to talk to you about it if you want.
Thank you.
Member Schweiss.
Thank you. Julia, thank you so much. Great presentation, and I really appreciate you hosting us here. I want to extend my thanks also to Carla Short, the director, and all of your staff. You know, I was listening to your presentation, and I had very fond memories from being here, working for 10 years. I remember the day we interviewed you, to hire you, and I think we did the perfect decision.
Thank you.
I don't think Julia tooted her horn enough. Today, you showed us a part, I know because of the limitations of the time, you showed us part of what you do, but the Department of Public Works, Julia's team, and engineering, they do a lot of great work. For example, they work on, they worked on Moscone Center, they work on the airport, they work on branch libraries. There are so many projects, and every project is really unique. What you saw was a small sample, I would say probably less than 10%.
Yeah, we have 2 Carnegie libraries we're working on right now.
Absolutely, yes. So I want to answer also, some of the questions that were asked. San Francisco is unique because it's a city and a county. San Francisco has about 35,000 employees, about 32 departments. And the Department of Public Works, between engineering and architecture, they act as an AE firm. And they are probably, with their staff and their expertise, they're larger than any AE firm in the region here. Not only in, like expertise, number of staff, but also in the magnitude of the work they do. San Francisco's capital improvement program is it's a 10-year, it has about 32 to 35 billion. And the Department of Public Works completes about, I would say between 2 to 5 billion per year. That's how many projects that they are responsible for. So it is really, a treat, to be here and to listen to you and to see you and to feel back. I worked in this building for about 10 years. So it is a nice feeling to be back here. And, I hope that, we can do this more in other cities and listen to other cities, And I also hope that maybe the board can initiate a program, like an award program for public agencies and for private entities. Maybe once a year, the two, groups can submit projects for awards, and we can, evaluate. We can maybe have a committee that evaluates these projects and issues awards for, groups and departments and, private entities such as what, Julia's group is doing. So thanks again. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
One question, did your BOA work on the now not so new public library in the Civic Center?
Yes, yes.
One nearby.
Well, we did not. That was IMPay.
You did. If I
But we
may.
did the inside. We
The
did
public library, yes.
Yeah, we
yes.
did the mix. That was the teen center that I just pointed
Right.
out. And we're
Well-
constantly working on renovations within it.
Well, that is spectacular inside and out, and I would consider adding that to your great presentation, to your video. It's just great.
Thank you. We did do a whole bunch of libraries, neighborhood libraries. And
Yes.
the Mission Branch Library, which is the oldest library in the city, right now is under construction, and it's a Carnegie Library. And then we're just about to start construction on the Chinatown Branch Library, which in my mind was desecrated when it was renovated in the 80s, the beam, cross things going over the large windows. So we're fixing that, so it's going to be beautiful.
Wonderful. Okay. Member Swice, again, thank you for helping coordinate us and getting us here into this beautiful building. And Manager Lowy, Architect Lowy, and now fellow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Hey, that's amazing, Lowy. Thank you for that. And it's impressive what you do. The diversity is beautiful. I can tell just from the presentation and the description that I'm sure everyone loves working here and with
It's a
you.
great
So,
team.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Appreciate you. Okay, we will move to, after, I did public comment already. Do I have to
Take it
do it
up.
again? Second time? After comments after we make comments, we have to open up a second time? Okay. I did.
Where the member spoke.
Is that enough?
Sorry.
I'll do it again. It's not hard.
It's not as hard as we are virtual. It's the virtual.
I did. I'm almost certain I did.
You did.
Okay. I like that you're here, though. So thank you. Thank you. No, I feel assisted, so that's a good feeling. Okay, so we're going to move forward to item F, where we will review and take action on our previous board meeting minutes. I'd like to ask for one of our members to make a motion to approve the June 6, 2024 board meeting minutes.
I do.
Member Swice has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Ilse Serrano, second.
Member Serrano has made a second. We will now open up for public comment on the minutes from June the 6th, 2024. Do we have any public comments? We do not. Are there any member comments? There are none. Secretary Gladstone, will you please take a roll call vote?
Yes. Sunny Ward,
Yes.
Victoria Brash,
Here.
Tian Feng,
Yes.
Brett Gladstone, yes. Mitra Kanani,
Yes.
Ron Jones,
Yes.
Leonard Manukian,
Yes.
Robert Pearman,
Aye.
Nielsa Serrano,
Yes.
and Fuad Suisse.
Yes.
That has carried.
Motion passes. Minutes accepted. Thank you, Secretary Gladstone. Item G, update and discussion on committee meetings of the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards, or NCARB. Executive Officer and Leader Zuniga, would you please give us a presentation?
I feel like I got a promotion. Thank you. This is just more of an informal item, so for any members who are on NCARB committees, if they want to give any updates. I actually don't think I have a current list of what members are serving on, or I apologize if you've sent it to me. I serve on the exam committee this year, so we're talking about the different types of questions that are on the exam, and whether or not to further narrow it down. And then NCARB is working on a draft competency framework that would substantially kind of revise the qualifications needed to prepare yourself for the exam, prepare for licensure. So they're looking at in the future, if that's adopted, what the exam would look like and how that would correspond. But it's a multi-year process. They're still involved in it. So I'm sure there'll be more information from NCAR probably at the next annual meeting. So that is all I have. I don't know if any other members have been on committees that have met and want to provide any information.
I just want to report, I'm continue serving on this year's policy, regional leadership committee. And we just met a few weeks ago and to determine the location and service of next regional summit, which will be taking place in city of Philadelphia and right in the center of the town, nearby museums and other facilities.
Sure.
And I'll just
Thanks, Member Feng.
I'm on the credentials committee, so we're already looking at a session for the next year's at-large candidates. So if you know people who want to run, they should be on the lookout for that on terms of.
Yeah,
Everyone, not just.
yeah.
Is it a microphone on? I don't.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to do something to press?
Is it on?
No, you just have to get closer. It's got a nice sensitivity that if you back off, it kind of doesn't pick you up. So if you get closer, it picks you up. Member Pyramid was saying that he's on the Credentials Committee. And they're now beginning the process of opening up for at-large candidates for board. And so if any of you are interested, or you know someone who's interested, California, obviously, we'd love for California citizens, architects, and board members to participate as much as possible in NCARB, so please let him know. Do we have other NCARB committee members, so people just want to remind us what committee they're serving on?
Ilsa Serrano, I sit on the Professional Practice Committee.
Great, thank you. Member Jones?
I'm no longer.
No longer serving. Okay, and just remind, Member
Yeah,
Canary.
I was on the qualification, alternative to qualification committee, and I moved now to CEU committee.
Great. And just a reminder that I don't remember if volunteer, they might still be I can't remember when
It comes out in the spring.
Yeah,
each
so
year
we're past the point
yeah.
this year, but you will receive an email, either directly from NCARB or will be forwarded from,
Yeah, they send out a personalized email, but when I get it for next year, I'll make sure to email everyone so you know that it's
And if
coming
you-
for
if
those
you-
who are interested. If you can serve, it's,
if you can serve, it's great. It's great to have representation, so.
thank you. Public comment, I suppose.
Yes. Do we have any public comment? Kind of funny. No public comment. We're moving right along. Item H, legislation update on SB 1452. Executive Officer Zuniga, will you please?
Sure, thank you. This is just a brief update. This is the bill that's going to extend the sunset date for the board and LATC. So this is sort of the conclusion of our very long sunset year. So I thank all the members for the work on the report that we put in, to Sunny and Pamela Brief at LATC that testified at the hearing in the spring. The bill at this point extends the sunset date for both programs, and it has a few more, maybe more technical changes that we'd suggested that are statutory changes. So it's currently on the governor's desk. The legislature is adjourned for the year, and the governor has until the end of this month to take action on the legislation. So I will send out an update once the governor hopefully has signed the bill. At one point we did have discussions with legislative staff about a possible restructuring of LATC and the board. That didn't go forward, so what is in SB 1452 is to extend the current board structure and then the current LATC structure and maintain them as in their current format.
Would you explain to the public
What the format is?
what that is? Just what the existing structure is.
So the existing structure is, so with
For the public.
with the board having 10 members, and so with the 5 architect members and 5 members of the public to regulate the profession of architecture. And then the Landscape Architects Technical Committee operates as a subcommittee under the board, and is composed of 5 landscape architect members appointed by the governor and the legislature, same as the board members, and exists to provide guidance to the board in how to regulate the landscape architecture profession.
Thank you.
Thanks.
At this time, we'll open this up to public comment. This is public comment on the legislation update, specifically SB 1452. Do we have any public comments? There are no public comments. Do we have any member questions or comments? Okay, we'll move along.
One question. I see the date for the extension was to 2029. Was that year chosen for a particular reason? Or it's a 3-year extension?
It's
or-
a 4-year extension. So
4-year.
the typical extension period is 4 years. We
see.
were 5 years since our last sunset review during the pandemic. I think the legislature got maybe a little bit behind in its review, and so we were extended 1 year without a review. So it had been 5 years.
It's
But
not-
4 years is typical, yeah.
It's more custom and practice
Right.
than legislative. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Thanks, Secretary Gladstone. We'll now move to item I, update on committees, and specifically the June 7th, 2024 LATC meeting. Chair Rishchinsky, would you like to give an update, or would?
Do you want me to give an update,
Officer
John, if you're
Zuckerberg?
interested? Sure. So the board, LATC met the day after the last board meeting. So LATC had an update on its budget. LATC had a statutory fee increase that took effect at the beginning of this calendar year, so it has improved their fiscal condition. They discussed their strategic planning, so both the board and LATC are going through strategic planning this year. So they had an update on that process from the department's office that does strategic planning. So we have that to look forward to later this year. And then a discussion on their Council of Landscape Architectural Registration Boards, CLARB, which is sort of the counterpart to NCARB. We did find that their annual meeting is next week, and we got approval yesterday to attend that meeting. And so the meeting's in Buffalo, New York, so we're going to see if we can make it. Better late than never. So we'll have more of an update on that at the next board meeting, but those are the highlights. Any questions?
Let's open up to public comment.
Anything John might want to add?
Yeah, Chair Rishchinsky, would you like to add?
Yeah, I would just like to add, in regards to CLARB, I've been serving on a subcommittee of theirs that's looking specifically at experience and how to bring those qualifications in line with the new uniform standard that's been adopted by them in regards to expanding pathways to licensure, and also to try to bring regularity amongst all the jurisdictions, so that, especially for reciprocity, if licensees are going for that, it clears up a lot of the discretion from one jurisdiction to the next in that regard. So,
Do you mind staying nearby in case we have more questions? Yes, Member Fang.
Hey, John. About maybe 7-8 years ago, California have a good representation on the board of CLARB, and I think she was serving on chair or vice chair. And since then, I'm not sure is any of these of a leadership position at CLARB has any California members. Do you know?
at this point in time, my understanding is the only person on the board who is from California is serving as the liaison to the LAAB, which is the accreditation board. But other than that, there's no California members that are currently serving on the board itself. Yeah.
Just inspired by our involvement at the identical, organization, NCARB, we had great opportunities, have a California's representation on senior leadership. Just
Yeah.
wondering, can board do something to help so California members have this chance, this opportunity?
Member Fang, I think this is important. I'd like to just freeze the conversation and come right back to it after public comment, but if you could stay with us, and then we'll come, I think we'll, after we come out of public comment, we'll continue. We'll open up for public comment at this time on the update of the LATC meeting. Okay, I see no public comment, so we'll come right back to that conversation. Thank you. Yeah, I think this is important.
Yeah, I was just going to add, it's not that we haven't tried to get California members on the CLAR board, but they completely control that process, and they choose who they want to basically serve. Because I know I was a candidate at one point and was not extended an opportunity when they had made their decisions how to proceed with that.
It's a good question. CLARB's board is both different and maybe more open than NCARB in that they have gone away from the regional structure that NCARB has, and they have more at-large positions, but also, as John is alluding to, it's a little bit more closed in the sense you don't really understand how people get on the board and how they're picked, and that is a pretty closed process. But they do have more at-large positions. They actually have a couple executive officers, I think, at other boards that serve on it. I serve on a committee of CLARB, but I did not apply to serve on the board. That seemed like a time commitment, but we'd be happy to look at that in the future, too, to try to increase California's representation.
Maybe you
To
should.
some extent, part of it is better understanding the ecosystem. And so with NCARB, there are committees, and you find your way on committees to better understand the ecosystem.
not
The
like
question
that.
is there a entry point that allows members to engage the process other than immediately getting to the board level?
Well, I can tell you, as chair of the LATC, we were very vociferous with them in regards to the issues that we felt were important to California on a number of occasions, and which included officially sending several letters to them that spelled out what our concerns were and what we thought were pertinent issues. And they took it under advisement. But I can tell you that when the uniform standard was adopted, we had offered an amendment that was rejected, and we were one of the few states that basically opposed adoption because we felt it didn't represent the interests of California. It would have made licensure a lot more restrictive here if we adopted the standard in regards to what our current standards are. So that was a concern that we had raised with them and never really received much of an answer at all on why they didn't take that seriously.
So, John, since I had served on, before I appointed Ron, the liaisons for a few years, maybe you can put this as an agenda for your committee's meeting to see the full board collectively can do something. Not that we want just had a role of leadership. Leadership has significant influence on the initiatives that nationally has impact in California. When you're not in that leadership, your voice is very hard to be heard. So anyway, just a longer term, see what the full board can do.
Be a good item for strategic planning discussion.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Any other member questions? Thank you, Chair. I appreciate your time and service.
I'm up again.
Ready?
Yep. Okay, moving
Item
on.
J.
Moving on to the executive officer's report, I'm just going to go over the highlights as the information is in your packet. Let's see, starting I think on page 22 of the electronic packet. bear with me. So I already talked about the last LATC meeting. Both programs are going to have strategic planning later this year, so those will be in-person meetings, 2-day meetings, I think, for both programs. We'll have a budget update at the next board meeting with a detailed fund condition. We did have an increase in our renewal and initial license and renewal fees last year from $300 to $400, so that is stabilizing our revenue. Business modernization is moving along. It's scheduled to be this phase completed in November. You know, I'm continue to be optimistic, and it's going to be great. We're getting the renewal applications going in the complaint module. So DCA staff is working really hard on this, and it is certainly a complex program. So we're getting there. It'll be good. And then moving on to, we have some personnel updates. We've had some changes in LATC. We have a new public information technician, Bethany, in the board's office. She's doing our social media posts now, which is great. And we hired Nico Frank. And then also in the audience today, we have Courtney Fontes, who was with LATC for several years. She is now the administration manager for the board, and she really stepped in to help out with Drew being out this week. So thank you so much to Courtney. And then an update on some outreach presentations. LATC and the board have done online outreach presentations. I participated in the one for the board earlier this month for AIA San Joaquin Valley with NCARB, and that was with students in that area. And it's always good to participate, and then I usually get follow-up questions afterwards with people asking about their particular path to licensure and how they can qualify. And so I think it's really helpful when we're able to participate and have that direct connection with candidates. You can see our social media posts, and then we'll have regulations later on the agenda, so I'm not going to go into detail here. But moving on. Oops, sorry, my computer froze. There we go. Into licensing statistics, we have the CSE, which is pretty standard. We have the first-time pass rate at 76%, which is good. Obviously, it drops off for the repeat test takers, but overall at a 73% pass rate. And then you can see how our California candidates are doing on the ARE by division. And that is pretty standard as well, where we have the areas. You can see onto the next page where we differ from the national pass rate.
I jump in, Laura. So I heard, working in the peers with NCARB and other jurisdictions members often implies the California's supplement test is too harsh on them. But if the initial taker is a 76 passing rate, that's not very hard. That's a very high, right? So
Yeah, that's a good question. That actually came up with the legislative staff during our sunset review, that they seem to have had maybe a comment from someone that I don't know, that they thought maybe our CSE was too challenging and that we should look at eliminating it. But then they didn't move forward with that idea. So it's something the board could talk about in strategic planning if you want to revisit, but certainly looking at these pass rates, and I think we could check with the Office of Professional Exam Services, but I think they would be, that wouldn't lead to a recommendation for a change. It needs to be, you don't want too high of a pass rate where it's not testing for anything, but also that it's only testing at the minimum level of competency, which I think is what this rate is suggesting. But we can certainly look at it a little bit more and have more information for the board at the next meeting in case you want to discuss this.
I will remember this number if I was asked by similar questions, I would answer that is 2 or 3/3 passing rate is very high rate.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should look into anything less rigor.
We do sometimes hear from candidates who've tried to take it multiple times and have not been successful, which is unfortunately always going to be the case. There's going to be someone who maybe is not able to pass the exam. But yeah, overall, it's, I think, defensible.
We've had this issue for several years in the past, and I don't think it's a testing problem. I think it lies on the feet of the institutions that are teaching our students and where they're having their internships. So we need to figure out a way to ensure that they're getting the proper education, and that when they're doing their internships, that the architect firms are doing their job in educating our students. I don't think that we should lower our standards in terms of our testing. We need to protect the consumer. So that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Right. I think that's a good point, and also that I think we can, the board staff can do more outreach to schools to make, we can't ask them to push licensure, and we don't want to, but we want their students to be aware of what is required if they want to be licensed in California, what they can and can't do, and that includes having, if they want to be licensed, needing to be able to successfully pass the CSE.
So Laura, I did have a question.
Yeah.
Under the complaints table G, and it's the same question for both.
You jumped ahead, okay.
Oh, are you not there yet?
That's fine,
Okay,
go ahead.
no, let me back up. Let me stay with, keep your pace. You keep going.
No, I don't, unless there are any other questions on the pass rates, we can go on to the complaints, yeah. I'm scrolling down.
Yeah, I guess under both Table G for architecture and Table H for landscape architecture, is there a reason that the average closing date has gotten so much longer? For architecture, it's another month, and for landscape architecture, another 2 months?
So I would say for both programs, there is a reason that probably differs a little bit. I will say, for Architects Board, we had maybe a backlog of CE complaints as we kind of went through some staff changes and transferred them from enforcement to licensing staff, and it was more challenging than I realized to kind of get that up and running. So they closed a lot of older complaints, so I think that is the spike here. On the landscape architect side, we had some staff turnover, and I was holding some of the positions vacant for a bit and to see if we would restructure the program and maybe become one multidisciplinary board. And so board staff were helping out LATC with their complaints, but that took a little bit while to get up to speed. They have since filled their enforcement analyst position, so I'd expect it to drop back down. And we've cleared the backlog of CE complaints, so I'd expect both of them to come down in the next report.
And this kind of goes back to my earlier question about whether or not the budget and these vacancies have an impact on our ability to properly serve.
Yeah.
And it appears as though this is the type of consequences of that staffing adjustment and the shifting of.
Yeah, we would see a permanent impact if we lost an enforcement position, I think, in either one, but I don't think we will in either program, but I'll keep you updated. Okay. All right, any other questions on the complaints?
Yeah.
And then we're going into a renewal year, so in the next year too, we'll see some more CE complaints as well. So that always impacts the numbers.
Can you repeat that?
So we have sort of a peak and non-peak year for renewals, so most of them are coming
right,
out in
right.
1 year, and so then with the audits coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the testing, the ARE testing a little bit?
Which chart are you looking at
The
specifically?
one on page 28.
Okay.
This is a landscape.
This is the landscape
Yeah,
architects.
That's what
Mhm.
counts here, that's why I asked. It's all 4 categories are behind the national passing rate. It's a very interesting, looks like very similar scenarios to architecture or ARE exams. Either Laura or John, any insight? I'm not seeing this as a problem, but if we know any insight, I would like to know.
You mean how California candidates
Yeah.
are lower and a
Because
lot lower in one
it's
area?
just happen to be all 4 categories.
Yeah, I think that is pretty typical. John probably has a better memory than I do. Clark is also restructuring their national exam, and it's not going to be in these same 4 divisions, but John.
Yeah, John Roshinsky with the LATC. I know that we've looked extensively at this, trying to identify where the discrepancies are. And I know one of the things that we were waiting for is with the business modernization, we were hoping to be able to go in and start looking a lot more closely at the statistics to try to figure out where there might be some discrepancies between our candidates and the national candidates in that regard. I can tell you that that table that represents 4 sections of the exam, I believe now there's only 3 sections of the exam because they've kind of reorganized some of the stuff. So we're waiting to see the statistics from the most recent iteration of the exam to see if there's any similar patterns or if there's changes now. based on the approach of the examination itself.
So that everyone.
So I know that that's an ongoing discussion that we have concerns about pass rates, especially if you look at the grading and drainage and that type of thing, where there's a significant difference there, trying to figure out what is it that's really driving that.
Since you mentioned the Section 4, I thought the California candidate should be very strong, where the few of the states has all these storm drain laws implemented by municipalities. So this is a kind of
Yeah, that's,
intuitively opposite to
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. Okay.
I would add, LATC spent a long time looking at this, similar to how the board has discussed this, and they actually had a really good presentation from OPES, the Office of Professional Exam Services, maybe a year or so ago, and looking at pass rates, and they actually broke it down by school, and they were able to identify one particular program that had maybe the weakest candidates or the lowest pass rate, and we did some outreach, and they weren't that interested in engaging with us, but we can try again. It's a good reminder, yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, John.
Anything else on exams? Okay. And then you can see after the citations, the most common complaints stay pretty similar. They're similar amongst both programs except for the CE issue, as landscape architects don't have the same CE requirement as architects. And that is the end of this item. Are there any other questions?
I have one question about an audit.
Okay.
A random audit makes sense. What does the audit consist of after that? Obviously, you request that the candidate provide the CE unit training that's required for the renewal. If those hours are submitted, where does the audit go from there? Is it over?
So we randomly audit 3% of renewals each month. So we select them, we notify them that the licensees, they've been selected for audit to please submit their transcript or evidence of completing the CE, because everyone signs their renewal application under penalty of perjury that they've completed the CE by the time they're submitting the renewal application. So then for 3% of them, we ask for basically evidence of that. And so they'll send us transcripts. So for those that submit the transcript and submit evidence that we would accept for 5 hours in zero net carbon and 5 hours in disability access, then it's closed. And nothing happens. So for those who can't submit the full, and some people don't respond at all, some submit partial coursework, and so they will receive a citation, and the fine amount is going to vary depending on whether they partially completed it or didn't complete any, if they failed to respond to us until they receive the citation, so that part can vary. But yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But it's closed if they submit evidence.
The point of the question is, I think we could save maybe some resources and money and a lot of emotional energy and distress if with the new business modernization, CE units are uploaded at the time of renewal, so that there's no longer the need for a communicative audit in the future. It's an in-house audit of 3% of the renewals
Of records we already have.
to records that you already have. So it cuts out the communication step.
Yeah.
It just seems more like a more efficient process, and it would also just, for people's livelihoods, like take out the citation. I mean, it would be bad for income, maybe. I don't know what the income's like from these citations, but it can't be that good.
No, it's not. It doesn't.
So it
support
certainly doesn't pay for the amount of work
Right.
that it takes to do it. And
So we actually had a discussion this week with the renewal form through Connect, which is our online system, and giving licensees the opportunity to upload their documentation at the time they submit it. We can't require it, I don't believe, but if that's something the board is interested in, we can look at that and discuss that at our next meeting and then go forward with that change. So once the new system is online, I think it would be feasible to do that without it being really a burden for anyone, because it's mostly submitted electronically. Providers can submit electronically. They have that option now. I think we're one of the only programs that does that outside of this system where you have the option to just submit it. But we can certainly push it more, and if we want to look at, it would increase our compliance rates, which is always, an issue.
It could also have unintended consequences, but I do think it's two-pronged. It's a staff efficiency, and it could make your life easier. It also could encourage renewals to not renew until they have completed their CEs, but I could imagine the unintended consequence would be that it would keep people from renewing because they know that they have to upload it. And so therefore, there could be a window of practice. I guess that's theoretically happening now already. They're doing that anyway if they've lied or.
I think maybe some people are playing the odds, like I'm not going to get selected for an audit, right?
I guess there's odds either way.
Yeah.
But so it may or may not help on the applicant side as far as emotional energy or the odds, but I certainly think it could help in-house.
Yeah, and we do hear from people who are like, oh, I took it, I just can't find my certificate anywhere. So maybe if they had the opportunity to submit it, because sometimes by the time we audit them, it is a couple months, several months from when they've submitted it. So
Would you
we can
only-
certainly look at it.
Would you only audit the people that did not submit an upload? Because you would assume that people that uploaded.
I think we would still do it of all renewals of the month, yeah.
Because if it's mandatory, it wouldn't make any difference.
Yeah.
They're
They're
posting
there.
it.
3%, you check, you do a visual check, and they're there.
Yeah.
So it is random, but people who failed the prior C audit will get audited again beyond the 3%.
Maybe, as they should. Okay. Are we done with that item? Okay. We opened up to public comment earlier, but I'll do it again just in case because there was so much conversation afterwards. Is there any public comment? I don't see any. We'll move on to item K, regulations update from Tim Rhoda.
Hello, thank you. The first regulation update is to modify CCR 116, which is our eligibility for examination. This proposal is eliminating the experience requirement to become eligible for testing. So candidates would be able to apply with the board and be made eligible for the ARE and CSE upon receiving a valid complete application with the board. Currently, they have to submit 5 years of experience to become eligible for the ARE, and for the CSE, they need to submit 8 years of experience and have passed all of the ARE to take the CSE. So this is in effect an attempt to hopefully shorten the licensure process for candidates pursuing licensure in California.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Am I allowed?
Yes, Member Kanani, please, sorry.
Okay, so just focusing on IPAL group, what happens to them? Can you clarify?
There would be no change in them. This is just a California, this would only affect candidates who are not going through an IPAL program. This doesn't require any educational path or experience path. It's just allowing candidates to test when they feel they are ready, which may be before 5 years have been documented with the board.
So and also in addition to that, I'd like to know if there's any changes related to those IPAL students that have already passed the AXP but they're still finishing their education. They're not allowed to take a supplemental exam of California, are they?
Currently, under current rules and regulations, they cannot take the CSE until all requirements have been met. This change would allow them to take the CSE upon applying with us.
Okay. And this model is a change that NCARB adopted, right, this year? This was in a resolution the board talked about in June, and so NCARB as a whole added this to their model law. I think there are some jurisdictions that do it now, but they're encouraging others to go this direction.
Yeah, and their model law changed to graduation from a state or federally regulated high school or a similar program.
So is it okay I start asking some question, maybe require some elaborations, or you prefer finish the whole thing before I?
Sorry?
You prefer finish your presentation that engage me, or I can start?
Go ahead.
I'm afraid of my question may expanding too broadly.
Are you suggesting that, I think it makes sense to go item by item.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
let's talk about item.
So first of all, I want to confirm that the regulation that we proposed here is generally in alignment of NCARB is moving
Yes,
towards,
this is
right?
part of their model law
Yeah.
now.
Okay. And two is I also want, because we have public member here as well and a new architect member here. So to put it more simply is after we adopt this regulation and regulation passed, so the new situation will look like that anyone that has an age older than age of 18 and graduate from a high school, is a high school diploma is required, and that individual can start taking, if he wants to, taking architectural license, ARE. Is that the case, right?
Yes, they would create an NCARB record, and they would be eligible to schedule and take a test if they felt they were ready.
So that is in a very simplistic way, and that's the new environment that we will, after everything is passed, we will face in.
But-
I just wondering, is that
Yeah.
But the
public members?
distinction,
Yeah.
the distinction, though, is that this new language allows them to take the examination, but it doesn't allow them to be awarded the licensure until they meet the additional
They
requirements.
still have to meet the
That's correct.
educational or the experience
Exactly.
requirements of the alternative pathway or the educational pathway.
Exactly.
I will add, I was on the exam committee for NCARB last year, and we spent many hours talking about this resolution before it went forward, because there was a lot of concern that it was watering down the profession, or you're allowing an 18-year-old to just sit for the exam, and he could guess his way through. And our psychometrician told us very clearly, like, that was not possible, like, if you looked at the statistics. And also, with the information that NCARB provides now, with the practice exams, it really allows it to just be a candidate-driven process. They can determine when they're ready, rather than us setting an artificial time limit for when they're ready.
I want to take this conversation also back to the pass-fail rates on the ARA from the previous item. Many of our higher, to the point of watering down the profession, many of our higher education academic situations, universities, they're just not focusing on the professional practice and the life safety issues of the profession. And so a lot of the things that are tested on in the ARE are not even part of their education to begin with. And so, again, just another reason why not to tie it to education in particular. The experience model, you could maybe argue, maybe is a little bit more important, but I don't see any benefit to tying it to education hours or experience.
Can I make a comment?
Yes?
As an educator.
Yes.
Well, that was true to a great extent until before IPAL. And when IPAL started, was kind of created, resurfaced all of these issues, or weaknesses, I should say. And so some of the universities, I know for sure that they have made extra attempt to fulfill that gap, and in fact even extended themselves to bring more content to their courseworks, and also creating seminars. Like USC is a good example of what they have as courseworks for practice. I mean, coursework seminars for practice that really, is top of the line for those exams that are expected the candidates to take.
No, I agree completely. I do think it's an exception, some of the
Well,
programs, and the IPAL,
yeah, but there are
unfortunately, the amount of students in IPAL is just not great enough, right, to force the universities to really get on board. And it's a bigger accreditation discussion, which is also another reason why you should all sign up to volunteer, because there's a big discussion going on between NAB accreditation and AIA and NCARB, and so it's important that your voice and all of our voices are heard in that conversation, specifically at that level, for sure.
Yeah, but you have to know that not all of those candidates that are taking exam are IPAL, former IPAL students.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah.
This is opening up to even more. So just like IPAL opened up, this should open up remove barriers. It's really about removing barriers, and I think it's important.
And I also think that it should also inform how we evaluate the performances, the pass rates. Because how we look at it today, under the current model, may change, or should change, because I suspect a lot of high school students, high school students won't be taking the exam, but should they, that pass rate will drop. And so then, I know we were attributing the fail rate to the educational and internship experiences of the candidates. I'm not quite sure that would be fair to make that same assessment once the market is open at a much larger scale.
Council, should I open up for individual public comment now? Okay, so we'll stop and open up for public comment on item K1. Do we have any public comments? I see none. Are there any more member comments on item K1? Mr. Roeder, would you like to move forward on K2?
Can
We
I-
have to take action?
Yeah, at this time,
Oh,
can
this one we
I
actually have to
suggest a
take action.
motion?
Okay, yes.
If anyone would
So
like.
here's a suggested motion that a member could make.
Approve the proposed regulatory text for Section 116, direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review, and if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing if requested. If the board does not receive any comments providing objections or adverse recommendations specifically directed at the proposed action or to the procedures followed by the board in proposing or adopting the action during the 45-day comment period, and no hearing is requested, then the board authorizes the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any technical or non-substantive changes to the package, and adopt the proposed regulations at Section 116 as noticed.
I second.
So moved.
And I
So we have a first by Vice President, a motion made by Vice President Jones, and it's seconded by Member Kanani. Secretary,
Yes.
wait, do I need to go public
Yeah.
again at this point after the
No,
vote, or
but
can I
I
take
mean-
the vote? May I take the vote? Okay. Okay, so a motion's been made and seconded. I'd like to open this up for public comment. Is there a public comment on the motion? No public comment? No more discussion?
I have one question. When an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old decides to take a test and goes into our system, are we asking demographic information of that candidate?
California would be asking demographic information of the candidate, since we now have that authority from the legislation from last year. And NCARB asked for more demographic data than we do. So if they've selected California as their jurisdiction and have applied with us, then we'll ask for the data. But if they start with NCARB to test,
It'll be
NCARB
data.
selects, and they collect more data than we do. Yeah,
Our application has very minimal demographic.
yeah.
Okay, and to meet the standards of this administration's agenda to fulfill more DEI opportunities, are we changing our process to ask the questions that will meet the standards of?
Recent legislation was
Yeah.
just passed that increased the amount of demographics that we collect.
We collected none, and now we're collecting.
We
Okay,
collected
and
none,
are
and
we
now we
collecting
collect
en-
much
are-
more.
Are we collecting enough to make determinations on who is passing,
Yeah.
who is not?
It's optional, but yes, we collect it, and we actually approved it in this, yeah, we did it 3-4 meetings ago, and there was much discussion, and I think everyone was happy.
We should have our first report of that data maybe early next year, so we can have
Thank
a
you.
longer discussion.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll stop and open back up for public comment. Are there any more, is there public comment on the recent discussion on the motion? No public comment. Secretary Gladstone, I move that we take a vote.
Okay, Member Ward,
Yes.
Member Brash,
Yes.
Member Fang,
Aye.
Gladstone, aye. Member Kanani,
Yes.
Member Jones,
Yes.
Member Manukian,
Aye.
Member Pearman,
Aye.
Member Serrano,
Yes.
and Member Suisse.
Yes.
Okay, unanimous.
Thank you, Secretary Gladstone. Member Serrano, you were our biggest cheerleader at that meeting. You were one of the reasons we passed it. So I think the board appreciates your voice during that time, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we may move on to item K2.
Okay. This one is for the repeal of CCR Section 120, which has to deal with the ARE retesting policies. Currently, the board spells out how candidates are supposed to reapply to take the ARE and how to apply to take the ARE, and then how long each past division is valid for. This was more of a holdout when the board was in direct control of ARE scheduling, and when we were not in alignment with NCARB's recommendations. However, we have since become in alignment with NCARB's rules and policies. So this is in conflict with current policies. So we want candidates to refer to NCARB and not our rules and regulations. So I'm recommending striking this portion.
Could you repeat from where you said we want? What? I didn't.
We would like to be in alignment with NCARB policies and not fall behind like we currently are. This regulation was last updated in 2014,
Yeah.
which has, there have been some changes since then.
Do I have to go to public comment now?
So it's obvious, but I just want to confirm. So this is regulation proposed that our requirement to align with NCARB's requirement. If they changes, and we follow the change, right?
Yes. So by striking this regulation, we would be following, by default, NCARB policies.
Ron has a question. Vice President Jones? Okay, no.
So at the appropriate time, if a member would like to make, I'm going to suggest a motion. Approve the proposed regulatory text to repeal Section 120. Direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review. And if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for hearing if requested. If the board does not receive any comments providing objections or adverse recommendations, specifically directed at the proposed action or to the procedures followed by the board in proposing or adopting the action during the 45-day comment period, and no hearing is requested, then the board authorizes the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any technical or non-substantive changes to the package, and adopt the proposed regulations at Section 120 as noticed.
Would a member like to make that motion?
I move.
Member Kanani has moved to make that motion. Member Fang has seconded it. I'd like to open up for public comment on the motion. Do we have any public comments on the motion? I see no public comments. Do we have any member discussion or comments on this motion? I don't see any. Secretary Gladstone, would you please call for a vote?
Yes. Member Ward?
Yes.
Member Brash?
Yes.
Member Fang?
Aye.
Member Gladstone, aye. Member Kanani?
Yes.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Manukian?
Yes.
Member Pierman?
Yes.
Member Serrano?
Yes.
And Member Suisse.
Yes.
That unanimous.
Thank you, Secretary Gladstone. Thank you, Mr. Rhoda. At this time, we're on item L. We'll review future meeting dates. Do we have them yet?
Yeah, just a reminder, the next LATC meeting will be November 7th and 8th in Sacramento for strategic planning, and the board's meeting will be December 5th and 6th, the two-day meeting, also in Sacramento. So we'll have the opportunity for a board dinner in between the meeting dates. So we'll send more information out shortly.
Right.
Thank you. At this time, we will adjourn. We're going into a closed, I'm sorry.
Actually has a.
Member
question
Fang, yes.
For the executive director. Do we have a strategic session at all in December meeting? Oh, wait.
It'll be at that meeting, that's why it's 2 days.
That's why.
We're well,
Yes.
okay.
Buckle up. Okay, members, reminder to stay put. We're going to adjourn, but we're going to close and go into a closed session. But at this time, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Drew, for getting us here. Thanks, staff. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. It's been a wonderful meeting. And I'm grateful for all of you and to see all of our board member faces again as well. So thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Thank you.